Hey friends and everyone, welcome back to Netcode Hub channel. I am Frederick and I'm happy to have you here today. In this video, we are going to have a look on how to create dependency injection container in .NET applications. Let's say you have two applications, you have a web API and you have a Blazor server application. You know, from the Blazor server, that is a .NET 8 interactive server, it has its own database that you can implement. And from the web API too, you can also implement its own database with the EF core. Now, if you want to create two databases, one for the web, the Blazor, and the other one for the web API, normally what you do here is to create a database connection or AppDB context class for the web API, and also create one for the Blazor server application, that's the interactive server render mode. But in this case, don't you think you're repeating the same code? Because you need to create connection string. After creating a connection string, you have to register it in the program.cs file. Let's say you're also going to have a same repo, such as maybe customer, employee, user. You want to create a repo to handle that. And when you're done creating the repo, you have to register this repo inside the web API, so you can expose it to the API endpoint. And also, we have to register the same repo inside the Blazor server application. In this case, you are duplicating the same data. Is there any way to improve this? Yes, we can. We can use dependency injection container to improve this. And that is what I'm going to take you through today. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe, because this channel has a lot of informative content for you. You can also like this video to support this channel. When we are done with this project, it's going to be available at GitHub, so you can just go in there, check the video description. You can also clone it and review. I do offer coaching sessions to people who are interested in .NET technologies, talking about Blazor, Mari, Blazor Hybrid, Web API services, and many more. So if you're interested, then check the video description. There's an email that you can write to me through it. Okay, first of all, maybe you don't have an idea what I'm talking about, so I'm going to take you through the old way, what you normally do our things with. Then, after that, you create another project, and we go in for the using dependency injection container. Let's get going. So, launch of Visual Studio 2022, and now let's create a new project in here. Now, first of all, we're going to create our data. Let's make it a blank solution. So, I'm going to say this is old way. Now let's get this project created. Now let's go in there and add, first of all, we're going to add a new project, and maybe this is going to be a class library, and with this class library we can just make it as domain, because you know this is going to handle our models, so domain will be okay. Now once you have this class created, we're going to add a folder, and now this is going to be entities, and you know this already, these are the domains of the project. And now this domain is going to be used by both the interactive server, that's the Blazor server, and also the web API. So we have this, and we can just remove the default class that we have in here. Let's create a folder to this, the domain. Now let's name this folder as entities. So let's say this is entities. So in this, we can just add a new class. And this class, we're going to name this as maybe customer, etc. So you can name it any name that you want. Customer will be okay. So once you have a customer, what else can we do? Let's zoom this. Okay, so you can remove all this. And now with this customer, we need just ID, name, email, and address. That's fine. So let's say when you have a lot of entities, maybe your DTOs and other services, you can put them in here in the domain, or you can create a simple another class, which is going to be an application layer. If you want to follow the clean architecture pattern, you can also do that. Or if you want to follow the 3-tier architecture too, you can also do same. I've made a video on each, so check the video description and you're going to find it in there. So since the two projects are going to implement the same model or the same domain, we can just create let's create a class here and I'll name it as maybe contract. So let's add a new project. Now this is going to be class library, and here we can say this is contract or repo. You can give it any name that you want, and this is going to contain all our interfaces, so we can implement them in here. Now with this, let's change this, and let's say this is iCustomer. So let's rename this, and now with the iCustomer, we can implement two interfaces here. So we need to include the domain. So control period, let's add reference to this domain. Okay, so we can add reference, and now we see this is solved. Alright, so we have these entities, and so they say declare body because it's not marked as an abstract, so there's going to be an interface. Yes. Okay, so we are done with this. Now we're going to add individual projects. Okay, so right click on this. Now let's add a new project. First, we're going to add web API. So we have web API. Now let's say this is API. So once you have this created or added, we go to web API dependencies. And now here we're going to install some packages that's we're going to use to perform migrations and create our DB context. Okay, so that's the data access layer. So in here, we go to the browse tab. You can type in EF Core. Then we're going to install tools. We're going to install SQL Server. So let's have the EF Core installed. Aside from that, we install tools and SQL Server. Then we are done. So we can also install, that is tools. Then we have an SQL Server here, so we're also going to install this package as well. SQL Server. You make sure you have the same version. Okay, so now these packages have been installed successfully. If you want to check, go to dependencies and our packages, and you can see we have these 3 packages in here. Now in the API, we're going to right click on this. We're going to create a folder here, and I'll name it as data. So that is what you normally do, isn't it? So within the data, we're going to right click on this. Then we're going to create a class, and I'll rename this as AppDB Contest. Okay, so this AppDB Contest, you know, this is going to inherit from DB Contest class. And now this DB Contest class is coming from Entity Framework call. So we can now create our DB set. So DB set, and now this is customer. So this customer, we have to get it from domain. So we say this is customers. Okay, now control period, we can include this from the domain. As you can see from this, we can include this. Okay, so we have a class registered. Okay, now this customers. So what is it saying? So then you have to create constructor here, control period. Let's create this constructor, and now we have to copy this, making a reference out of passing as a t value. Okay, so yes, and it is saying that cannot that contain members such as field, method, or statement must contain now existing. Okay, so this should be in here. I believe you've seen that, right? You've seen what to do already, so it must be in here. Okay, so that is fine. It's set and done. We have DB context created. Now what to do here is go to create a database connection string. And for our connection string, you can put it on top here. And we say that connection string, and we have a server is equal to local. We have database here, and this is let's say web API. Okay, so for let's say DI, dependency injection web API, trusted connection is equal to true. And now when you check this, we have trust server certificate. He said this is true, very simple one, and that is all. We are done. Okay. Now, aside from doing this, what else can we do? We have to register the service in here. So go to program.ts file. So take note that here we are creating an AppDB contest here, separate one for the web API. And when you get to the interactive server application too, you have to create the same thing. So you're making a duplication in here, right? For service registration too, we are doing same. Alright, so let's check it out. So from here, we're going to say that builder.services.addDBContest. Then we say appDBContest. Then in here we have to pass in, specify this, and then we say o.useSQLServer. And now with this we need to builder.configuration.getConnectionString. And now what is the name of the connection string? The name is default connection. If you actually remember from the app settings, default connection, so it is the same. Okay, so we are done. Now we have to terminate this. Okay, now the service that we're going to create a service for this. So this service that you're going to create in here, let's create right click on the API, then let's add a folder to this, and there's going to be repository. We can make it repository since maybe you're going to be adding a lot more, but here you're going to add only one. And now this is customer repo. Okay, so once you have this customer repo is going to inherit from iCustomer interface that we created in the contract folder, contract projects. So iCustomer, then control period, we have to add the contract, and that is this. And after adding, you have to implement the interfaces in this. So let's say implement all of them. Now here we can create constructor for this and inject our appDBContest that we just created. So appDBContest, then we have to create an instance, we initialize it in here. Fine. Now when you get to add, what are we doing? We're going to say that appDBContest, so then we're going to have customers dot add. Then what are we adding? Just customers. Very simple one. Aside from that, we say await appDBContest dot save changes async. We save changes. That is all that we are doing here. Now this iCollection. So with the iCollection, we can use this lambda expression. And now with this lambda expression, we can say that await appDBContest dot customers, so dot toList async, using here Entity Framework call. So Control KD. And that is it. So we can just push this down here. So we need to just these two implementations, and that's what we are looking out for. Okay, let's save this. Now once you create this interface, we have to register this. So we come to the program.cs file, and now in here we have to register this. So builder.services.add scope. Then the scope, we need to implement the interface or specify the interface from the contract project, which is going to be the general one using contract, and now the respective implementation here, and that's going to be the customer repo. So you need to implement this customer repo. You see, then we have this injector. You see here too, this one too, we're going to repeat it again. Now let's see. So we save this. We have to go in there and create our controller, and that will be all. So with this weather forecast, maybe we can modify this a little bit, and now make it as customer. So we have customer controller. Yes, modify this, and we're going to remove all of these guys because we don't need them. Or do you? Let's remove this, and I know this must be. Let's make it an API. And first of all, we're going to have an HTTP, so HTTP post. And now with this post, we have a public async task. And now with this task, we're going to have iAction results. So iAction results, and we say this is add customer. So this add customer, you need to pass in the customer model. Then we say this is customer. And in the extension of body method, we have to, so we say await. But before we do that, we must create constructor in here and now inject the interface that we created. So that's the iCustomer. Then we say this is customer. Control period, you have to create an assigned field. Okay, we copied this, and now here we can change this to data. And now when it comes here, we are saying await customer dot add customer. We're passing the data in here, and now return. Okay, we can say saved. Okay, now let's go and do the get. So we have HTTP get method, and now here we have public async task. We have iAction result. Then with this, we can say this is get customers. So in this, we need to specify, so we can use this lambda expression and we can return okay. So await customer dot get customers. So with this, we are done. Now let's save this and let's set this to the main project API as a startup project from this. And now let's run it and check it out. Alright, so you see that we have an endpoint ready, but if I click on get, there's no migration, so I'm not sure we're going to have anything. We must have an error. If you try this, you have to get an error as I'm going to get. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to perform migration. So when you check, you see the response that is getting from here, like due to transient failure and etc, etc, etc. Okay, so we know what is happening. You cannot open database. So we know there's no migration, so quickly we have to do here is go to the solution. Now we're going to run migration from package manager console, and in here we're going to say add migration, but you make sure you choose an API as a startup, and here for default project, then we say add migration. We said this is first migration, or this is API migration. Then it's going to generate the migration file. Aside from that, you're going to update the database or update to create this file into an actual thing for us, actual database, and 8 tables and corresponding columns. Okay, so as you can see from this, I believe you know this already. So we're going to update this, update database. And I'm just going to create it. So once it's creating, let's click on SQL Server Object. And let's see. So SQL Server Object. Maybe we have to wait. Okay. Yeah, so it is done. So when you go back here, you go to this and we open databases. Now we have DI Web API. Have you found it? This is it. Have you found yours? So in the table, we have only one customer table. And let's wait for it to get reloaded. Then we can see the table that we just migrated. So yes, that is this one. Okay. Now when we run this and we try to add data, we are going to get the data. We can add it and we can also get the same data again. Let's try this out. This is ready, so we click on customer, try this out. So let's see, this is Netcode Hub. So maybe you have an email here as an admin at gmail.com. Then we're gonna have a password. Oh, not a password, we're gonna have an address. So you know that's Ghana, West Africa, and I believe you know this as well. So you pass in yours, and let's try to execute this. You're gonna have a response at save from the OK status code. Let's wait and check it out. Alright, so the response is ready. When you check it out, you see we have saved, and that's fine. So let's go to get, and let's see if we're able to get what we added. Yes, so you can see now we have this, right? So it means our API is working, our migration, everything is working perfectly. Now we're going to close all this from here, close all tabs. Now we go back to solution, and let's say here we want to add web app. Now this Blazor web app, we are going to add WebAssembly or interactive server whereby we can implement this endpoint. We're going to add this interactive server whereby it's an own server that we have to, we can implement migration to it. We can create repos and etc. Okay, so you're going to have two databases in here. But check or take note, we are going to repeat some of the processes that we made or we initiated in there. We're going to repeat the same thing in there, and that is what I want to skip it in the next project. Okay, and that is using the dependency injection container. For now, let's add a new one, so we have to stop this, and we right click on the solution. We're going to add a new project, and here we're not going to use .NET 7, we're going to use .NET 8, and we have web app. So when you open here and now select Blazor, you're going to have this web app. So let's choose this, and we're going to say this is Blazor server. Now interactive mode, here it is a server, so let's click on create to get this created. Okay, so now once you're done with this, we need to also create a DB context. We need to also do same thing as what we did to the API, isn't it? So we have to do that. But first of all, the same package that we installed to the server, we have to also do same. So I'm going to right click on this, go to unload project from the Blazor server, click on the API. Now these are the packages that we need, so we have to also copy the same packages from here. Then we go to the Blazor server, and now here we're going to have this item group. Then let's paste these packages in here, and that's what the EF Core SQL Server Now tools. These are the packages. Now let's save this. Let's go to solution, right click this, and I reload with dependencies. So let's see if we're going to have these packages. So when I go to dependencies, packages, you must have these packages in here, and go see they are reloaded since we have installed them already. Okay, now in here we right click on the project. We have to create this. Let's add folder to this, and now this folder is going to be data as what we've done in the API. So we can extend the API so we can be watching this. Now we need an AppDB context class from the same thing, so we can also go to this, and now in here we choose the server. We're going to add a new AppDB context, and it's going to be a class. Okay, so AppDB context. Now what we have in here, we are going to copy the same thing and paste it in there. That's repetition, okay? And that's not healthy. So when you check here, AppDB context, we need the same thing, so we have to grab everything as you see in here. We go to a Blazor, and now here we paste it. You see? So we're having the same thing. Customer, we need to include the entity. So let's add reference to the domain, and now we have it. So you see, we're repeating the same thing. Two projects, each is having data context. A data folder which contains the AppDB context, and aside from that, we have to also register. So when you go to the API program, in here we have to register this. So first of all, let's register the connection string. So here from the Blazor program.ts file, before the app build, we have to register this context, and now we have to create the connection string in here. So we go back to the same solution, the API app settings. We can just grab this from here, then you go to solution again, you go back to the app setting.json in the Blazor server. Then with this we can paste this, and now this is not web API, this is Blazor server. So Blazor server DB, okay, DI Blazor server DB. And once you're done with this, you're going to have two separate databases. One is for Blazor server DB, and that's one is what you know already. Okay, so we have it in here created. We need to include this. Okay, so this is set. Now what we can do next here is to create our repository. Since we have the contract folder created outside, and that's going to be the global one, we need to create a limited repo here so we can be adding to this context. So in here we have to create a folder to this, not the API, we're done with the API. So then the Blazor server, right click on this, and now let's add a folder to this. And I'm going to say this is the same repositories. Now this repositories, we're going to create the same class. And I believe you guys know the name already, isn't it? That is a customer repo. I know this customer repo, it has inherited from this iCustomer repo, and you know where this coming from? Not repo, iCustomer, and this is coming from the contract folder, the contract project. So control period, we have to include this contract project. And now once you're done, we need to implement the interface. So we have the same interface here. So let's go to the API. Let's go to the repository, the customer repo. Then we can now go in there and I'll grab this one here because it's the same thing. So we have to make a copy quickly. Yes, we go to the customer repo, and in here we can paste them here. The same thing. Okay, so customer, and there's an AppDB context we need to include from the data, and we have it. So we see that we are implementing the same thing. We have one model. We want to perform add and get list, but in the two separate projects, whereby we have implemented EF core against each, we have to create the AppDB context twice. Each is for each project, and we have to do the same thing again. That is what you're going to skip in the next project that you're going to do, okay, using the dependency injection container. So we have this already. Now this, you have to include .ef core. Okay, so we know we've done this already. Yeah, that is fine. You are done, isn't it? That's good. Now we have to create our UI. So we go to the component, not the API. We go to the Blazor, then component, pages. Now in the home page, we can now have a simple one in here with a simple edit form. So I have this edit form here, and notice that a form that I've created. Let me just, and here we are injecting the AppDB context, and now here we are including the domain.entities. We have a data access. So with this, we have the AppDB context. Okay, so we don't need this. And you have the interactive server, or interactive render mode as what server. Okay. Now with this AppDB context, it is coming from, let's see, it's coming from Blazor server.data folder, right? So let's include that. So at using Blazor server.data folder, that is where this AppDB context is coming from. Okay. So that is it. You see, this is a simple edit form, and in here we are calling this AppDB context.add customer, then save this. Now let's try to get all the customers. So we can get all the customers. We can use maybe one of each component that we have, maybe counter. Now with this counter, we can just make a call when the page initializes. We create a collection of what customers. Then we can now get a customer from the AppDB context into a list form. As soon as you add .toList, it means you have to implement this EF core. Okay, then we have the same thing. So Blazor server.data, we have this AppDB context. So the same thing, just a simple table that we are creating. Then we are looping through the customers and are displaying each property in here. Okay, now we have to apply migration to this. So let's see. Let's go to the, let's set the Blazor server 2 as a startup project, and now from the package manager console, you make sure you now set this Blazor server, and let's perform the same thing. So add migration, and this is not, this is Blazor server BS migration. Let's add this and see. So it is ready. Now let's update the database. And while this is updating, we're going to have two tables. So one for the Blazor BS database. We're going to have one for the API too as well. Okay. So let's see from the SQL Server object. If we, let's see if this is done. Yeah, so this is almost done. If you refresh the databases, let's see, you can see we have this test DB. As you can see from here, this is the API. And when you check here, you see you have DI event injection Blazor server DB. Oh yes. So you see you have two databases in here, right? So we have two databases. Now each is for each project, as you can see from here. Now the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to register. So we go to the Blazor server program.cs file, and here we have to register. We have to create dependency injection against the interface and the repo that we created. So iCustomer And I can see that from here to we are repeating the same thing. So this is customer repo. So customer repo, and now with this is coming from control period. It's coming from the repository. So you can see when you check the API, we are doing same. When you check this one, we are doing same, right? Now we are repeating the same thing in here, repeating it here. Okay, but we have an error here. It cannot be used as a type of an argument. So services dot add scope. Okay, so this is set. Now let's run the Blazor server and now check it out. So this is ready. Now let's see, when I click on counter, we must get the list. And if I click on counter, okay, so it is navigating to the counter. You see this? Okay, so no information added. Now home, we are in here from counter, no information added. So now let's add information to this. So we're gonna say this is Netcode Hub. I would like to use Netcode Hub like this. And now it's Ghana. Click on save. And this is going to be saved. Yes, so click on counter, and now we have this. You see that? Let's add another one to this. Maybe instead of the Netcode Hub, we can say hub 1, the same admin 1 address, the same Ghana in here. Then let's click on save. Being saved. Now you can see from here we have what has been added. So you can see that we're able to perform these DB operations using the two server projects. So we have an API and we have a Blazor server. Okay, now you can see that when you check the source code, we made a duplicate of some of these. Example is from this. We made a duplication of this, the same thing from here, and the same thing from the web API. Let's say when you have a lot of dependencies that you need to create, you have to repeat the same thing here and the same thing over there. The same connection string has to be typed or kept here, and it has to be repeated in the other RDB context program.cs file as well. And this is bad. This is bad. Okay, so we're going to create a new one. Then we're going to see how to use this dependency injection container to handle this. And after that, you yourself are going to testify and tell me, or you're going to just check it, analyze it, and I'll tell me which one is more easy, okay, in terms of implementing them, which one is easier. So you can see that the first one here, second one I'm going to do is going to be easier than this. Let's see. So we're going to close this. So with this, we're going to create a new project here, and that is the one that I'm going to put the GitHub. Okay, as for this, I believe you guys know already, so I'm not going to put this anymore. But this one is going to be available, so let's create a new project here. And we're going for blank solution, and this is demo di. This is a dependency injection container. Okay, so I think this, okay, very simple one. Demo dependency injection. Where's the injection? Injection container. Let's click on create. And okay, so here, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create, let's say, some infrastructure. If you're using from, or if you are talking from the clean architecture perspective, that's an infrastructure project. If you're also talking about from the 3D architecture perspective, then it is what? Data access layer. So either infrastructure layer or data access layer. Let's create this. Now, data access layer here, we're going to create our repo and our implementation for this. Then we're going to create our service in that. Now, within our services, we're going to register all service that we want inside that service. Then at the end, anytime that we add any presentation, we just initialize or we just register that layer inside the program.cs file of that specific project, and that is all. So we do all in one class. Then in each of the presentation projects, we're going to register it in each program.cs file, and that's a very simple one. Okay, so let's create our demo again. So we're going to click on add new project, and here we need the same thing, the same model for this. This is going to be the domain. So as for domain, we're still going to maintain as it is. So let's have a domain, and I'm going to make some copy and paste because you don't want to waste time in here. Okay, so let me go to this domain. Then from here in our domain, I can just paste this as an entities. Let me just remove this. So from customers, it's the same thing, right? Now let's create our other library for this, and this is going to be a new project. And here you can call it as infrastructure, or you can call it a data access. Okay, so you want to make it as data access. Let's create this. Now within here, we are going to install our packages. So instead of installing the packages against each presentation project, we're going to install it to this, so that this becomes a center of the project. Okay. The reason why I'm doing this is when you check the definition for DI container in .NET, it provides a way to register types of services and their dependencies, and then it resolves these dependencies when needed. So it acts as a centralized repository for storing and providing instances of an object. Okay, so you want this to be in the center, whereby each presentation can just throw its hands and retrieve it or use it anytime that they want. Okay, so let's get these packages installed from data access. Right click on dependencies, and then you get packages, and at the same 3 packages you're going to install them. EF Core, the other 2 guys. Okay, you're going to install the same thing. So maybe what I can do, since I have them already, maybe what I can do here is we can just grab them, then we can include them. They're very simple, but let's see. So we have EF Core. Let's install this. From EF Core, we need to install tools. Have you found yours? Tools, get it installed. The last one is you need the SQL Server. So can you see where is SQL Server? That is this one. And accept this. Okay, so we have this installed. If you want to verify, check it out from dependencies, packages, and they are here. So let's delete this class. Okay, now in here, let's open a new folder, and now we're going to make this as data, where we're going to create our data access. So let's have our AppDB contest at this area. So let's create a class, and this is AppDB contest. Okay, so with this AppDB contest, this is going to be a public. So it's the same thing. And maybe I can just grab what we have already. And now, so let me just grab this and now paste it here. Let me remove all this because we don't need any. We have to include EF Core, and that's the other thing that we need. And we need to include the domain as well. Okay, so let's add reference to the domain, and now we have this. Okay, that's fine. Now, when we are done with this, we need to create a service container. So this is what we're going to be using to register all repos that we're going to create, and also a database context. Okay, so in each of the presentation project, what we need to do here is to inject the service container that we're going to create. Very simple one. So here we're going to say that this is service container, and now in this service container, what can we write, or what can we say here? We need to create a constructor here, or we can create a simple class and now inject our iService collection. So let's remove all this. We don't need any of them. And here, let's make this as public, and let's make that static so that each instance will be created once and forever. Okay, so let's create a public static. And now with this static, you're going to say iService collection. So you see, and now with this collection, we're going to say my custom services. Then in here, let's implement this. So iService, which means you're going to use this iService collection, and we can say this is services. Aside from that, we also need, we can just put comma. We need iConfiguration. So iConfiguration, you see that, so that we can have access to our config settings or the app setting.json, so we can retrieve the connection string name. And we say configuration, and maybe we can also have a look on connection string name. Okay, so connection string name. Okay, now once you have this, we can extend this, and latter part we're going to say return services. Okay, so we can return services in here. But first of all, what are you going to do here? We need to add register database connection. So services.add DB context, you see, and I'm going to say this is add DB context. So we are doing this once and for all. So, and this is app DB context. So app DB context, we need to pass an options. And now with this, we can say that option.use SQL server. In here, let's pass in builder. No, here, not builder. We need to pass in this configuration. So .get connection string. And now with the connection string, what are you going to pass in here? We need to pass in this connection string name. Okay. So we are done with this one. We are done with our connection. Our settings is being registered, and that is it. Very simple one. Okay. Now let's create our repo and interface here. Here we can also create another. You can also add another project, and as contracts, where we're going to inherit or going to create all your contracts. But I don't think there's need to do that. Okay. We all the time want to make our work very simple. Since we're going to consume this, and this is a data access layer. So let's add a folder to this. And we can make this as repositories. Now each repository contains the interface and its implementation. So let's make this as an interface, and this is what iCustomer. Now this iCustomer, I believe you know what you're going to have already, so you don't have to waste time. Let's have this as public, and you know we need to include this customer domain. Now after creating this, we need to create its repo. So from the repo, we go to solution, we click on the same repo, and I'll click on add class, and this is customer repo. So customer repo, and this is, I think we can we can inherit from, or we can just go in there and grab whatever thing that we have in here, and I'll paste it because it's the same thing that you want to do. Okay, so in here, let's see what we are going to do. Okay, so we have the customer repo, and it's inheriting from this interface. Now aside from that, we inject our appdb context from here. Then appdb context, since we are using the same model, the same table, we can use it, can add customer to this, and we can also get a customer list. So you see, now with this, we need to implement, or we need to use EF core. So we have this, and that is it. So we create one instance in here, and now instead of creating various repo for each of the projects, we create one, and now we can use it everywhere. So once you're done with this, we go to the service container, and now in here we're going to register the service. So down here, what we're going to do here is services.add scope. Then here we are saying that iCustomer so iCustomer, then here we have our customer repo. You see, so we have to register the service in here, and that is all. Okay, so this is all that we need to do in here. Also here, when you create and register this, you know this is a service container we are creating, so we have to specify the scope, that the lifetime. The service lifetime is supposed to be scope, transient, and etc. So we can specify it to this line of code. We specify the migration assembly to this service container, and we are referring to this service container.assembly, and we have the name, and in that we are specifying the scope of it, the lifetime. Okay. Let's see and just correct these errors from where we have in now. So Okay, so that is it. It is okay. We can now save this. So what we're going to do here is we go to the solution, and now in here, we have a data access, and we have the domain. We're going to add our presentation application, and this time around we're going to add the API first. So let's add a web API in here, and we say this is API. Let's create this. So when we check, all that we need to do here is we need to include only this tool so we can perform migration. So we can just grab this tool from here, then we go to the API, you right click and go to unload projects, or you can actually install it. So we save this, then here we have to reload project with dependencies, and now this is solved. Now all that you need to do here is to go to the program.cs file in the API. Okay, so in here we need to include this, the registration. Okay, so how can we include the service that we have created? It's very simple. We need to specify the service. So we do before this app build, it is specify this. So build services dot my custom service, and here we need a configuration and also the connection string, and this time around is a default connection. We have to also include the namespace, and now what is the namespace? It is using, so maybe on top here, so using, and it is data access. So data access, we are not having data access, so it means you have to add it to the project. So I click on dependencies, add project reference, and I'll choose the data access. So data access dot, and there's a folder known as data, include that, and now it is solved. Okay, now we need to, we have an error here. We need to build this application. So let's build this project and see. Alright, so now this is done. We can now go ahead and I'll set the API as a startup project, and we can now run this and see. So you can see the only thing that we did here was to do this, and aside from that we have to create a controller and just include the repo, and I'll start using. So I have the controller that we created already. I can just go in there and I'll copy that controller. We come to the controller, and then we can just paste the controller in here, because it is very simple. So API/controller, and now here we need data access. So data access dot repository, and that is where we can find this interface implementation, and it is the same thing that we are doing in here. Okay, now let's see. So we set the API startup. Let's run the API and now check it out. Alright, so we have an error here. Now I want to check it out. It's my custom services. Let's copy this and we go back again, and now here it is my custom service. That is an issue. We can now run this and check it out, and it's going to work. So when we are done, we're going to do the same thing through the Blazor server, and here all that we need to do is to create our UI and then use the service in here, and very simple, we can also implement this. So that's a simple way to actually do that. Let's have a look and see this. Okay, so we have a customer. Now we're going to try this out. Have we added migration? No, we haven't. So we need to perform database migration. So right click on the Solution Explorer. Then in here we have the API set as startup project already, and we go back to the package manager console. Inside here, instead of applying to the API, we apply to the core, and that is the data access. So in here we're going to add migration, and now we're going to say this is an API migration. And now let's update the database. We have an error here. It is saying that the connection string properly has not been initialized. So let's check from the API. We need to check from the app.setting.json, and whoa, we are not having any database connection string in there. So it means that we have to create one. Now down here we're going to add the same thing, and that's going to be the test. So let's say this is a web API. Okay, so that's fine. And that is trust server certificate true. Now we save this and let's do it again. So update database. Now let's check it out. Yeah, so this is done. Now we can go ahead and run this and now check it out. Now let's see. So controller, we have a customer. Let's add this one. So let's see, and that is saved. So let's go to get all customers. Yes, and now we have it. You see? So now let's say if we add another project. Configuration is very simple. All that we need to do here is to register the services in there, and we can now use the repo in it. Let's try the Blazor. So let's go to solution. We're going to add another presentation project, and it's going to be the Blazor. So web app, and now here this is Blazor server. Then we choose the server as interactive render mode. Then in here, what you need to do is very simple one. We can just go to the API, and now from this, we have the tools package, and that's what we need. So let's go to the Blazor, right click on it, and load project. Then from the settings app, we're going to add the item group, and let's save this. Let's reload page with dependencies. Okay, now let's create a connection string. So I'm going to copy this from here. Then let's go to the Blazor. From the app settings, we have to specify the settings in here, and that's also the default connection. And now this is Blazor DB. Okay, so we have DI Blazor DB, that's the database for this app. Then once you're done, we go to the program, and we need to include the same thing. So using, then we have data access. We have to add the namespace first. So right click on the Blazor, dependencies, add project references, then add the data access. We need to also add the domain. So let's add this. And now using data access dot data folder. Now in that, when we come here, we can have access to builder dot services. So we need to run this. Let's build this package or this project and see first before we add the service. So right click on the Blazor app, and then let's go to build package. So it's going to restore packages. Okay, so that is done, and now in here we need to add builder.services. So dot my custom services. We need to specify the configuration. So you pass in builder.configuration. Aside from that, we need the connection string name, and now here we can specify the default connection in here. So this is all that we need to do, and aside from that, we go back to the home page, component pages. In our home page, let's go in there and grab all that we made into this home page. So here we paste this, and that is the default one, the number one that we know. So here this is going to be data access dot serve data, and we have this AppDB context injected. Very simple one. Okay, then let's go to the counter tool and do same. That is to get our customer. So you go to the counter, and now here our customers, we need to include the data access, and that is it. So we have domain.entities, and that's all that we need to do in here. So you can see it's very simple, isn't it? So what you do here is to create your service, the data access or your infrastructure layer. You create a dependency ingestion container, you inject all your services and all your repos. When you're done, you now have to consume it in a presentation application. You install tools, then you register the settings or the service inside the program, then perform migration, and that is all. So with this, let's see. So we're going to save all this. Now let's set the Blazor app as startup project. So set this as startup project, and go to package manager console. So add migration, and now this time around it is server So let's say this is Blazor server migration. Now let's wait and see. Okay, so done. Now let's update database to get this created. Okay, so now we can, let's run the server 2 and now check it out. Okay, so let's see from here. Now pass netcode hub address, maybe unknown. Now save this and let's check it out and see if it's going to be saved. Yes, it is. Go to counter and we have it in here. We can also add another one. Save this, go to counter, and now we have it. So we can see that when we check, we're able to implement data access, or that's infrastructure or data access layer in 2 projects. That's a presentation project by using this dependency injection container. Yes, so anytime that you have an idea to implement this, then at length, or maybe I think you can actually go for this. I believe this is clear. The source code of this, I'm going to leave it to GitHub, so check the video description and you can have it. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to catch you up in the next video. Till then, take care.